It was a warm Friday morning in late September 2011 in the small but bustling town of Riverton, Ohio. The kind of place where most people left their doors unlocked, where neighbors knew one another's business, and where the First Federal Bank sat neatly on the corner of Main and Chestnut. To locals, the bank was just another landmark. A beige brick building with reflective windows and a small parking lot out front. Nothing about it screamed danger. Nothing about it suggested history would be made there. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. But at 9:27 a.m., three masked men stormed through its glass doors with weapons drawn. The robbery that unfolded will become the most infamous crime in Riverton's history, not just of money stolen, but for the brutal aftermath, the trail of betrayal, and the years-long investigation that followed. Every robbery starts long before the guns come out. The mastermind was Danny Price, a 32-year-old ex-con with a record for burglary and auto theft. Danny had grown up in Riverton, but unlike most, he never quite fit into small-town life. He was restless, always chasing quick money and faster thrills. Prison had taught him two things. Never trust anyone fully. Banks were easier than people thought. In the summer of 2011, Danny was broke, living out a cheap motel, and deeply in debt to a local loan shark. That's when he reconnected with Marcus Hale, an old friend from high school who now worked as security contractor. Marcus was steady, disciplined, the opposite of Danny, but he was also bitter. After years in the army and private security jobs overseas, Marcus had returned home only to find himself underpaid and underappreciated. Over several beers one night, Danny pitched the idea. A bank hit. Quick, clean, big payoff. Marcus hesitated until Danny revealed he already had an inside man. The inside man was Rachel Meyers, a 27-year-old bank teller. Struggling with medical bills for her sick mother, Rachel had made a desperate mistake. She'd borrowed money from Danny months earlier. When she couldn't pay it back, he gave her an ultimatum: help him or watch her life crumble. Reluctantly, Rachel agreed. She told him about the bank's schedule, the armored car drop-offs, the alarm system. Even with security guard was the laziest. She was terrified, but Danny reassured her, nobody's going to get hurt. We're in and out in 5 minutes. To round out the crew, Danny brought in Luis Ortega, a 24-year-old drifter with a reputation for violence. Luis didn't care about the plan, the risks, or the town. He only cared about the money. 4 people. 1 bank. A plan that felt foolproof. Friday, September 23rd, 2011. Rachel went into work as if nothing was wrong. She smiled at her coworkers, processed transactions, and counted bills, though her hands trembled every time she looked at the clock. At 9:25 a.m., a black Ford Explorer rolled slowly into the bank's lot. Inside were Danny, Marcus, and Luis. Danny wore a skeleton mask and carried a sawed-off shotgun. Marcus had a Glock tucked under his tactical vest. Luis carried an AK-style rifle, itching to use it. They burst through the doors at 9:27. Customers screamed. A security guard went for his weapon, but Marcus pistol-whipped him before he could draw. On the ground, everybody down. Danny shouted. His voice echoed across the lobby. Rachel played her role, pretending to panic while secretly hitting the silent alarm under a counter. Exactly as planned. She knew it would alert the police, but not immediately. They had maybe 4 minutes, 5 if they were lucky. Danny jumped the counter, forcing Rachel and another teller to open the cash drawers. Marcus moved with military precision, keeping his gun trained on the customers. Luis, however, was reckless. He screamed at an elderly man who was too slow to kneel, shoving the rifle into his face. Danny cursed at him to calm down. The crew stuffed nearly $280,000 in cash into duffel bags. But as they prepared to leave, chaos erupted. One customer, a 19-year-old college student named Ethan Walsh, tried to be a hero. He lunged at Luis, attempting to grab the rifle. A shot rang out. Ethan fell, blood pooling under him. The entire bank went silent, then erupted in screams. Danny froze. This wasn't part of the plan. He had promised Rachel nobody would get hurt. Now there was a body on the floor. "Let's go," "Let's go," Marcus barked. They bolted out the doors and into the Explorer, tires screeching as they sped away. Inside the bank, Rachel collapsed. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She had crossed a line she could never return from. The robbers raced down rural back roads, ditching surveillance-heavy routes. Marcus had scouted 3 different escape paths, and they switched cars twice. First to a stolen Honda Civic, then to an old pickup hidden in a barn. By noon, they were holed up in an abandoned cabin 30 miles outside Riverton. The news was already spreading. First federal bank robbed. 1 dead. Police hunting 3 masked suspects. Danny tried to celebrate, dumping piles of cash on the table. But the mood was grim. Marcus scolded Luis for shooting the kid, while Luis shrugged. "He shouldn't have played hero," Luis muttered. Danny poured himself a drink. He knew the shooting would change everything. What could have been a 5-year sentence for robbery had just escalated to potential life in prison. And Rachel? She was falling apart. The Riverton Police Department had never faced a crime this big. Chief Harold Benton immediately called in the FBI. Within hours, investigators were swarming the bank. They collected bullet casings, reviewed surveillance tapes, and interviewed witnesses. Rachel tried to act innocent, but her guilt showed. When agents asked her to recount the robbery, she slipped up, mentioning details she shouldn't have known. Meanwhile, detectives found a partial fingerprint on the glass door. Cross-reference in the database, it came back to Daniel Price. Within 3 days, the FBI had their suspect. Back at the cabin, tensions grew. Danny wanted to lay low, but Luis pushed to move the money fast. Marcus sided with Danny, insisting they wait until the heat died down. Rachel was terrified. She hadn't gone to the hideout, but Danny kept calling her, reminding her she was in justice deep. She considered going to police, until Luis showed up at her apartment one night, just to check on her. The unspoken threat was clear. She kept her mouth shut. For now, the FBI closed in on Danny's known associates. They tapped phones, followed leads, and quietly surveilled his motel. Rachel couldn't take it anymore. The guilt, the nightmares, the fear of Luis, it was crushing her. Finally, she cracked. She walked into the police station and confessed everything. She told them about Danny, Marcus, Luis, the cabin, even the exact routes they'd taken. The FBI offered her a deal, testify, and she'd avoid prison. Rachel agreed. October 2nd, 2011. Before dawn, a SWAT team surrounded the cabin. Danny, Marcus, and Luis were asleep when the flashbangs went off. Chaos erupted. Luis grabbed his rifle. Marcus shouted orders. Danny scrambled for duffel bags. A shootout followed. Bullets tore through the cabin walls. Luis went down in the crossfire, riddled with rounds. Marcus surrendered after a standoff, realizing it was hopeless. Danny tried to flee out the back window, but was tackled by agents in the woods. The robbery was over. The trial gripped the nation. Prosecutors painted Danny as a reckless mastermind, Marcus as a disciplined enforcer, and Luis as the trigger-happy killer. Rachel testified in tears, admitting her role, but portraying herself as a victim of coercion. The jury deliberated for just 8 hours. Danny Price, guilty of armed robbery, conspiracy, and felony murder, sentenced to life without parole. Marcus Hale, guilty of armed robbery and aiding and abetting, sentenced to 35 years. Luis Ortega, deceased. Rachel Meyers, granted immunity, though she lived the rest of her life branded a traitor. The first federal bank reopened months later, but Riverton was never the same. A memorial plaque was installed for Ethan Walsh, the college student who lost his life. Danny sat in prison, still insisting Rachel had betrayed the crew. Marcus adjusted to life behind bars, haunted by the choices that ruined him. And Rachel? She moved away, changed her name, tried to rebuild, but she never escaped the nightmares. The Riverton Bank robbery remains a cautionary tale, not just about greed, but about how quickly one bad decision spirals into tragedy. Danny once believed banks were easy. He was wrong, because in Riverton, Ohio, everyone remembers a morning when masks came through the doors and only blood was withdrawn. If you were in Rachel's shoes, trapped between fear, guilt, and survival, Would you have confessed to the FBI sooner, or kept the secret to protect yourself? Don't forget to like, share, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting true crime stories that keep you on the edge of your seat.